Hello and welcome to Off The Brawl on Off The Ball. We're back on the boxing beat today after a bit of a Conor McGregor-led sabbatical last week. Phil Egan and Simon Maguire are here in studio, and we're delighted to be joined once again by former middleweight champion of the world, Andy Lee. Andy, how's it going?
Good, Ronan. Thanks.
Did you get involved in the Khabib McGregor business last week?
I got fully invested, yeah.
Did you?
I was in France and I watched the press conference, and I thought it was great, you know. I really got into the fight. For all the fights Conor McGregor had, this was the one I was like, yeah, I'm going to follow this fight. And I watched the build-up and then the fight, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, ring rust. A lot of people were talking about that after that fight. Did you ever experience that, or do you think it's a real thing?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's a different element to deal with, being in a ring and an octagon in this case, as compared to a gym, you know. There's definitely a sharpness that you have, and kind of an instinct or an automatic. You do things automatically when you're fighting regularly, and there's no replacement for competition and being active and staying busy. And it was definitely a disadvantage from having that time off, even though he had a boxing match in between. I think it definitely didn't serve him to have that time off, and it helped Khabib by being more active. Yeah. Did
you enjoy the MMA brutality, Phil, or are you Team Joe Brawley?
Oh, I'm certainly not Team Joe Brawley anyway. No, the fight itself, it was fairly dominant from Khabib. Even when they stood up in the third round, this was McGregor's chance, and he actually shipped a right hand, which, McGregor obviously has a decent chin, but the writing was on the wall when you kind of thought they were standing up, and Khabib had the upper hand there. You kind of knew it was going to only go one way. Even if it had gone, it was going to be so one-sided on the scorecards, but you kind of just knew. I think when we talked about it beforehand, we said either a very early stoppage for McGregor or Khabib wears him down and submits him.
But by the third round, I thought McGregor was pretty much tired, but by that point, so Khabib could stand up, maybe. Yeah. Maybe he said, I won't stand early, and he was kind of clever in that aspect, that he waited until he had him kind of tired or worn a little bit before he did stand the trade. What did you guys think of it?
Well, Khabib lost his first round in the UFC, that third round. Yeah. Now, he just lost it just about. But you got the feeling that he felt Conor was there for the taking, let him punch himself out, get that last bit out, and then finish him off in the fourth round, and he just dominated him again in the fourth round. In terms of looking at a rematch,
more of the same.
I'd be putting that off for a while, Yeah. We talked about the Nate Diaz rematch, but he dominated the first round in that fight when he lost the first one.
Yeah,
and then he made the adjustments and he won the second one, but I don't know where he goes for a rematch with Khabib.
I'm sure Khabib's fighting Mayweather.
Hopefully not.
And after the post-fight sort of ramifications and stuff, Mike Tyson described it as unimaginable. Mike Tyson, of all people, he can't fathom something like this happening. So what's the vibe in the MMA community now after it's all settled down a little bit?
I think we're still waiting to see what the commission says and what kind of punishments they dole out. Khabib has said if they ban his teammate, he's leaving the UFC as well, and they can keep their money. So he's really put the ball back in the UFC's court, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it all pans out.
Grand. Well, anyway, we'll turn to boxing now because there's lots to get into. Shortly we'll hear from Katie Taylor as her big night in Boston fast approaches, and we'll also assess what promises to be a big week for the Irish boxing scene across the board. Of course, there are some other big talking points, not least Deontay Wilder's latest knockout performance. Have we all seen this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's I just can't get over it. He claims he didn't know that there was a human being in that costume. It's what did you think was in this?
This kind of blew up after, this was out about a week, and then it kind of got a lot of traction after, I think he was pretty annoyed that they were actually even asking him to do this, you know. Yeah. And your man the mascot is kind of saying, hit me in the stomach, And next thing he punched him in this which broke his jaw apparently.
Yeah.
And what's the technique like here?
It's pretty good. It's pretty.
Oh.
He followed through with the shoulder, so he meant to do it.
Did Lou DiBella ever get you to do anything sort of?
No.
Like that, no.
But I probably have a similar reaction. And it came out, I can tell by the clothes he went, that was the same day he was doing the press tour Tyson Fury.
Right, okay.
And so he was probably getting wound up, and this was probably at the end of the day, and it looks like it's a Hispanic broadcast, so he's probably just saying, what am I doing here? Now they want me to punch this guy, I'm champion of the world, I'm not here to punch mascots, and okay, he wants to be hit.
Yeah.
I'll hit him.
Like, it's just... You know, so, like, imagine your colleague saying to you, by the way, you're going to put on a mascot suit and you're going to take a punch off the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah. Well, apparently the guy isn't going to press charges. He has a broken jaw, but Wilder's offered him 2 ringside tickets, so he's happy enough. All's well that ends well.
Would you take a punch off the other Wilder so you could watch Wilder and Fury ringside? I think I would.
Oh, gee. But, before we look ahead to events this week, it's worth looking back at what proved to be an interesting night of fights on Saturday. Terence Crawford made no mistake as he dispatched Jose Benavidez in Nebraska. But there were no home comforts for Lewis Ritson, who was pretty decisively beaten by Francesco Patera in Newcastle. And there's always talk about levels in boxing. Was that what happened on Saturday night?
I think I watched the fight live, and I think he just, in that fight, Lewis Ritson, he was taught a lesson, or he learned a lesson that you can only learn in the ring. People may try to explain it to you, and it will take a very good fighter to come through what he did and win. When a young fighter like him, and I've experienced myself in the first fight with Veer, and I've seen it countless times since, when a young fighter's on top early in the fight, and especially in this case where he's the hometown fighter, everything's kind of in his favour. He's a ridiculously heavy favourite going into the fight. And then things don't go to the plan. You know, the opponent's not reading from the same script. And he has the first 4 rounds, he's dominant. Looks like he's going to cruise to, you know, pretty easy win. Not easy win, but a dominant win. And then all of a sudden Pantera comes back at him and hurts him with a body shot. He said it in the 5th round. And he said in his post-fight interview that he never really recovered from that. But I'd say physically he did, just mentally he never recovered. And it's a funny thing how confidence in a fight, it's so fragile, you know? That at one moment you can be winning everything, leading, looking like you're going to cruise home, and then you face a little bit of adversity. And that's what happened in the fight. And for young fighters, if you can watch this and if you can hear it, but I could say this till I'm blue in the face to a young fighter, but most of them will only learn it when they're in that ring and it happens to you. That when you're on top, and then you just have to persevere. And you have to kind of ride the storm, because there always will be a storm, especially when you're fighting an older, more experienced fighter who has been a champion before, like Patera was. You have to ride out the storm and don't let it, just kind of find that resolve to bite down and dig in and take those few. Had he weathered the storm in, say, round 6, 7 and 8 and kind of showed that he wasn't affected by the resurgence in Patera, he probably would have went on to win, because Patera would have become diminished. But when Patera showed that resurgence and that shot, he could read Ritson's face and emotion and body language and see that I'm having an effect here.
Yeah,
you know, he was encouraged
round,
by that.
The end of the 7th round, when Patera landed a few great shots and Ritson was rocked, like, even if you watch the last round, like, Patera is still, he's still on his feet, he's bouncing, like that 7th round, I think he realised, I have this guy now. He
probably was buying himself. He probably thought, this is, no, he definitely was buying himself. He was not easier than he thought it would be, but he said, I've got a chance, and this guy is falling apart in front of me because I've just put up a little bit of a fight. That could have been, like, in that round 5, that could have been Patera's last stand almost, had Ritson just weathered it and as I said, just bit down, just kept grinding. But he has to learn, Ritson. He has to make some adjustments. And as I said, those lessons can only be learned. You might be taught, like, some things you can be taught, you know, ring craft, finesse, how to manage a fight, but sometimes you have to learn it for yourself, and he had to learn that, like, on Saturday night. And it was, even though it was tough defeat, and you'd worry about the comments, he was so distraught after it that he
felt like he let down his hometown.
Yeah, you can relate to that, but you'd want to hear, I want an immediate rematch. He didn't show me that. So you'd worry about the comments he made after, but I'm sure, give him a bit of time, a bit of reflection, and a bit of encouragement, if he watched the fight himself, to say that I was in this fight. And it was still a close fight. It wasn't like he lost it. He got whitewashed in his hometown. it could be fight of the year, you know, for fight in Britain so far, you know. It was definitely a back and forth fight.
It's interesting you talk about ring craft and finesse, because you've spoken before about how Emmanuel Stewart used to teach you to like disguise the knockout or disguise the big shot. So Paul Smith made the point while Ritson was on top that he's loading up on everything here. He's not throwing flurries. He's just throwing single big shots all over and over again. So do you think that's the kind of thing he might take away from this fight, that plan Bs and Cs in the ring?
Yeah, and I think if they had a rematch and immediately he would win. He would win it. He just needs to. Yeah, he needs to finesse. He needs to, for one, move his head, and not every punch needs to be a hard punch. And you can change the speed of your punches to having that will have a devastating effect as well. You can't punch every punch hard, because after 5 or 6 rounds you will be tired, and that's what happened to him. You know.
But do you think there was a lack of urgency from his corner going into rounds 10, 11 and 12?
Yeah, I was interested. I was wondering if they were, I don't know. Yeah, there wasn't an urgency to say you need these rounds, which even if you don't, you probably should be communicating that in the corner anyway, because it's better to be safe than sorry, you know?
Yeah.
They're definitely, I don't know if they were lackadaisical. Maybe they were thinking about, we're in our hometown, we won't lose this. And it was a close fight, and they might have thought he was winning, but...
I think in the last round, going into the last round, his corner did say to him, you need this round.
That was the first time they said that, you need this round. And I think it was quite evident going into round 8 and 9 that the tide was very much even and turning towards Patero.
Like you mentioned the odds before the fight, like they were so against Patero. Even for him to win on points, like nobody gave him a chance, because obviously to win on points in someone's backyard, like you have to dominate them. So he dominates the second half of the fight.
But it was a great performance. You have to take your hat off to him.
Absolutely.
It was one for a fighter on foreign soil. It was probably one of the best performances in a long time. He's done it before. He went to Helsinki and beat a champion there for the same belt, and now he's done it again. You know, so he's a good fighter. But I would like to see a rematch. I think Ritson could.
Like it wasn't a case that
he just has to get over
soon for him.
No, he just has to get over the emotional disappointment.
Yeah.
And some fighters can bounce back. Like you look at Conor McGregor. We just spoke about. We're going back to him again, but like. The loss to Khabib, I was probably hurting personally. You know, he's probably hurting, but he doesn't show that. And in some ways, that's admirable. You know, I was never that way. You know, if I'd lost a fight, it would haunt me. I still think about the fights I lost more than the fights I've won. But some fighters can do that, where they brush it off. But with Ritson, you'd suspect, after his comments post-fight and seeing the footage of him in the dressing room, he looked very despondent and very, downtrodden and, disheartened, so...
But can you use it as motivation? Say when you lost Vera, so you're fighting him again, that must just take over when you're in camp getting ready for the rematch.
It does. Well, what you use is the fact that you've been written off to motivate yourself. But it's also, when someone has beaten you, it's a huge obstacle to overcome, you know, mentally, more than physically, because you first have to figure out the reasons why you lost, and then you have to strategize and see if you can. You're the one who has to make the adjustments as the losing fighter. You know, the winning fighter thinks, I just have to do the same thing again, and I'll have the same result. Whereas the losing fighter, you're the one who has to make the adjustments. But I think Ritson can come back. He just needs one or two things, and he will learn hugely from that loss.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they did have a rematch, where it would be. I mean, the atmosphere was unbelievable.
No, I'd have to go back there. It's the biggest, I'd have to go back to that. That was,
so if you're Patero, you can ask for more money now. You know, you've already come over and done it once.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Phil mentioned it there. Like, you can't really argue that it's too soon, because he breezed to British level to an almost incomparable degree. Like, he was just blowing these guys away.
Well, the thing is that he's a hot ticket seller as well. You know, and when you have that kind of that label, or when you have that kind of back in, you have to have meaningful fights as well.
Cher turned up to watch.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can't just stay at. It is a lot. I know how much he's hurting now, and it must be really tough for him. And
well, if he's walking around Newcastle now, they're all going to be coming up to him, the Geordies, saying, "Oh, hard luck," but that's probably not going to be much consolation for him.
No, that's the worst thing you want to hear.
Yeah,
that's like you don't want to be a good loser. You want to be a good winner. And like the fact that Shearer was there. And like I said, when you're selling out arenas like that, they had to move him like that, you know.
Josh Warrington was similar. Do you remember he kind of similar English level, British level, European level, all within about 8 months, and now he hasn't come unstuck yet. Like, he's just gone through the level, so it can happen. And Ritson has a lot of star quality and power. So
you're his number one fan.
Listen,
like, how were you after the fight?
I was going to ring in sick today, but here we are. That was in Newcastle. There was some other fights on that card. Robbie Davis Jr. beat Glenfoot in a sort of unglamorous fight. Joshua Buatsi got a win. Dave Allen, first round knockout. Anthony Fowler, Jose Burton got wins too. There was another big card down the road in London. Barry McGuigan's new crop. Lee McGregor got a win. Chantel Cameron, who's been linked to Katie Taylor, also got a win. And Hunter upset Martin McCauley.
Great win, yeah, for Michael Hunter.
Yeah.
He's a kid I would have trained with a long time ago. It would have been maybe around 2010 maybe. He came over to one of the Klitschko camps in Austria and was trained. At that stage, he was like the national champion as an amateur and had a lot of offers from a lot of promoters. And like he was probably like one of the hottest prospects coming out in the amateurs in America, and everybody wanted a piece of him. And then, like 5-6 months later, he's like completely gone off the radar, you know. And I haven't heard from him. I know he lost to Yusk, and he was kind of threw in at the deep end there, being put in there. But like, you see him over fighting in York Hall, this kind of once touted prospect from the amateurs, like a real, you know, a gem and a shining star that a lot of people wanted. And he's fighting as an opponent in York Hall on a Barry McGuigan card, and he's got bad shorts on, and you know, but you can still see the star quality there. You know, he fought a great fight against a man who was 3 stones heavier than him. Yeah, like, and used his speed and his agility and his movement, and took his breaks when he had to. You know, fought using the economy of energies when he had to burst, and then to kind of take his rest again. And he got the finish in the end. It was a good win and a great fight. And I think it hopefully propels him now, you know. And he's the IBO champion. It's not a great belt, but he can build on that, you know.
Exactly.
And hopefully, I'm not sure what a force he can be at heavyweight because he's so small at that weight. But it's a great win for him, and you know, a great night for him.
Yeah, it's one of those probably could just give him the confidence to get his career back on track, or the motivation to know I can still operate at this level. And you know, as you said, it didn't quite go to plan, but maybe things are back on track for him now. For all the talk of the vibrant UK atmospheres, one man who's really captured the imagination stateside is Terence Crawford. As we mentioned, he was back in his hometown of Omaha to take on the undefeated Jose Benavides, and he lived up to the billing. There's Terence Crawford doing the business against Benavides. Andy, last time you were in, we spoke in depth about the welterweight division, and you said he was the pick of the fighters in your opinion. I'm sure that just copper fastened that for you.
Yeah, it feels good now. It seems now that, you know, after that victory and the way he went about it, and just the style of fighters, that like the only one to challenge him might be Errol Spence. Another young, vibrant champion, and a southpaw too, 2 southpaws. But it's interesting. Simon has a list of the fighters there who. You go ahead. You compile this list.
You might be able to read it, right?
Welterweight sign with Al Heyman, who potentially won't be able to fight him.
It's incredible.
Yeah, well, it looks like Manny Pacquiao is going to sign with Al Heyman. If he hasn't already, it's going to be announced shortly. There's Errol Spence, Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Mikey Garcia, Adrian Broner, Danny Garcia, Jordanis Ugas, Andre Berto, Devin Alexander.
So, but those are all potential opponents that he'll never fight because of the whatever.
Like as you said,
differences in management and promotion. But the way he's going at the moment, like he probably wants those big fights, but he's selling out arenas there in Omaha. And he's probably himself and Lomachenko are toss up for the pound for pound #1 fighter now, so he's getting the recognition he deserves. And it was just the way he went about his business. No, Benavidez, a couple of people fancied Benavidez. I talked to people in the fight game, and a couple of them, they did, not that they would beat him, but they fancied him to do well. But he was completely shut down by Crawford, you know.
Is he fully fit, do you think?
He had some time off. You know, there was people talk about Benavidez, like when Benavidez was a kid in the Wildcat gym, he used to do very well. I wasn't there, so I can't say, but they used to say that he used to do very well when Amir Khan was like in his pomp. So that's the kind of reputation he had. You saw the bad blood and the build-up, and it was, you know, there was definitely an edge to the fight in terms of the dislike or the kind of competitive nature to the fight. But once the fight started, it was just one-way traffic, and he just, like, Crawford just old-schooled him. He just basically, you know, it's a term, and it just means that he just was busier than him all the time. He used a jab, an override jab, which is, it's a way of throwing a jab when a southpaw fights an orthodox, or vice versa, where the lead hand, you keep your shoulder high and you throw your jab, and it overrides their jab, and it kind of dominates them, keeps them at a lower level than you because you're overriding them all the time with your jab. And when Benavidez was just posing too much. What did you think? He was just posing and standing and waiting for one big shot or looking for the counter.
Yeah, even when he was getting hit, you know, he was putting the hands down, shaking his head. So,
well, there were times when you questioned, do you think he was fit? When they did exchange in the second half of the fight, he was always the one looking for a break after the exchange. And as I said, the old school move, Crawford stepped straight to him and let his hands go, you know, and just those kind of things, always keeping your feet moving, always keeping your hands moving, even if it's just a jab in between the breaks, it catches the eye. And that one of the rounds, and then he had that spectacular finish like that.
Unbelievable.
Really, like,
to watch it a few times, to see that right uppercut.
Yeah, a few people actually made that point. They missed it on the first viewing. So.
I missed it, yeah.
So
I just saw him on the ground. I was like, what happened there?
But his head just goes back, so it's such a
did well to get up.
Yeah.
But it was only a matter of time before he was going to get
as Simon said there, that all the other welterweight contenders are on one side of the street. Like, in theory, Errol Spence is probably the only one that justifies enough money where they might come together and say, this fight's worth doing on pay-per-view. It's probably a sellable story.
Definitely, yeah, it wouldn't be. You know, it's not undoable. You know, there is, if there's some network who are willing to put it on, interesting that HBO have decided to step away from boxing now, and that's a huge blow for boxing in America, and I think throughout the world, because the fights that we've had over the years on HBO, it was the home of boxing, and now it's next year will be a different landscape. You know, it's due to, I guess, the streaming services that are coming into boxing and the different networks that are in play. But it's a real blow to HBO. But it'll have to be Showtime, you know, pay-per-view, and it'll have to be. Yeah, it's funny because he fights on ESPN, so maybe they can do some deal where they work. Crawford fights on ESPN, so where they can work together. But Spence, and if Thurman could challenge him, if Thurman can get back to being active, you know,
that's becoming a bigger if. Like, there hasn't been much word from Keith Thurman, and maybe he's just.
Well, now that you mention it, he spoke after the fight on the Crawford performance, and he said he's barely a champion. And Thurman wants a tune-up fight, and then he wants Errol Spence.
But you can't argue with Thurman's resume.
No, you can't. On paper, he is a better champion. It's just that he's been out so long, injured, got married, you know, and is he hungry enough with all the, you know, he's probably a millionaire now, so that's also a question of things. But Crawford is a great fighter. He's a real throwback. You know, I think he could have hung around with anybody at any year. Like, you know, you think about the great welterweights in the 80s, and he kind of reminds you of that type of a fighter, you know, a real competitor who doesn't get bogged down in, like, performance anxiety, or he just really wants to get in there and fight, and he enjoys fighting. And you could see in the build-up when they had he confronted Benavidez at a public workout, and, like, you could see, he was saying, I'm going to whoop you, you know what I mean? And he was really taking pleasure in the thought of doing it. Yeah. And he just went out there and did it, you know, and he's a real great fighter.
And him and Spence is such a great matchup. Hopefully that does happen. We'd love to analyse that one, but where you've got Crawford, but there's probably more raw ability, and he's more willing to take risks, whereas Errol Spence just never does anything wrong. He's technically perfect, so. And he's probably a more natural 147 fighter.
Bigger fighter, yeah, maybe. But he did look big though, didn't he?
He's going into
Crawford looked like he struggled to make light welter. I remember seeing one little video of him on him, and he was in the sauna 3 or 4 times before the weigh-in, and shower on in his hotel bedroom, and so he probably has always been a welterweight, fighting at light welterweight. But he did look, compared to Benavidez, he looked like the bigger fighter to me.
And you mentioned HBO leaving the game, and people can say what they want about Bob Arum, but he jumped ship from HBO before that happened and signed up with ESPN, and they've since invested unforeseen amounts of money into boxing, and he's got a great crop at the moment. The 2 pound for pound best in the world, Lomachenko and Crawford. He's got Michael Conlon and Shakur Stevenson, who had a really impressive win there on Saturday night.
Great right hook. I love that.
Yeah.
And also Michael's Olympic rival, who's in there, which will be a potential fight down the line.
They're both fighting on the same card this week, so they're probably lining that up.
Yeah, is that his debut?
I don't think so. I think he has had one before this.
Okay.
But Simon, you were impressed with Stevenson, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, that was his 9th fight. And, funnily enough, there's the Irish connection there with Billy Walsh from the US Olympic team. And when Walsh took over, he actually sent Stevenson home after a week.
Oh, yeah.
Because he wasn't mentally right, or he wasn't doing what Walsh wanted. But eventually they got around to it and got it right, and he won the silver medal for the US at the Olympics. And afterwards, Walsh said, he's one of the best, he's class, he has some things to work on, obviously a bit of maturity as well, but he has the ability, his movement, his timing, his distance. We just to work on his work rate, get more flurries of punches, but he has all the tools to be a great. And that's via the Irish News in Rio. And then he suggested that he foresaw that Conlon and Stevenson would fight further down the line, so hopefully that'll come to play. But I think Stevenson has called out Lee Selby.
Yeah, it's not very often people are calling out Lee Selby, but here we are.
Yeah, I know. It's an interesting one, and it'd be a huge step up. But that was, on paper, was a step up. For Simeon was a very good amateur. And I think he only lost once or twice before that fight. So
to Selby and to Quigg.
Yeah, and he was a standout amateur. That was a tough fight with Quigg. That fight with Quigg probably could have took its toll on him, and might have probably seeing the effects of that fight with Quigg now in his career, in terms of how quickly he was knocked out. But it was a great punch, great right hook inside, little shot right hook, and so that was a step up, and that's a big win for him. It's a marquee name, and it's a good win, and puts him in the bracket. It'll be interesting to see how Michael Conlon responds, and when his performance coming up.
Yeah, so that was a great occasion in Omaha, Nebraska. Elsewhere, the World Boxing Super Series Series 2 is beginning to take shape. Teti advanced in that one. We'll get on to the Irish action now, but just a word on Ryan Burnett, Andy. It's a couple of weeks yet, but he's entering into this murderer's row of bantamweight division. He's fighting Nonito Donaire, which, it sounds crazy to say, might be the easiest fight out of the 8,
Yeah, well, Ryan was the one seed, and I think picking Donaire was a good move, smart move. It's still a hard fight. It's not an easy fight. When you saw how he kind of rebound in those later rounds against Frampton, he showed that he still has enough to hang in there.
Yeah.
And that was a featherweight, with a hard punching featherweight. So, he showed that he still has something left on there, and he can still fight. So Burnett will have to be on his P's and Q's and be ready, to handle business. But I'm sure he will. And then it's the mix. Then he'll fight Teti apparently next, and that's a fight that I know they've been pushing for. Frank Warren and that.
Yeah, they've been
pushing for a long time, and fighting Teti in Belfast, trying to antagonise and tempt Burnett to react. But it's a fight that'll happen. Teti, he's looked sensational at times, and other times he hasn't looked great at all. He's kind of just gone and done the business. But Burnett is number one seed for a reason, and he can mix it with any of those guys. And we'll see. Ian Ioane, the Japanese fighter, had a sensational knockout, so he's looking like the danger man in the tournament. But from fight to fight, it'll all change. I think there's still a lot to happen.
Yeah, of all, it's been a great concept so far, but it's just such a stacked bracket there. I've never seen anything like it. So let's just see how that plays out. We're going to go back stateside now. This week marks something of an Irish invasion, with our own fighters flying the flag all across America. As usual, Katie Taylor is chief among them. She defends her world lightweight titles against Cindy Serrano this coming Saturday. Delighted to say I was able to grab a quick chat with Katie earlier, and here's how we got on. All right, so she's one of the most decorated amateurs of all time and is now a unified world champion in the programme. Delighted to say I'm joined on the line by some Irish sporting royalty. Katie Taylor, how are things?
Yeah, not too bad, Ronan. Thanks so much.
Good stuff. Katie, I know you're no stranger to awards at this stage, but I see you were named Overseas Boxer of the Year by the British Boxing Board last month. That sees you join the likes of Klitschko and Rigondeaux and the likes of those guys. How does it feel to be in that sort of company?
Yeah, it's actually a lovely honour. It was definitely unexpected. To be on the same list as some of those great fighters is a huge privilege for me. So, yeah, I'm delighted. It's definitely a nice feeling to win those kind of awards.
Yeah, and we'll obviously get into your upcoming fight in Boston shortly. And I know your documentary's coming out later this month, though. You made that together with Ross Whitaker, and it seems to be getting great reviews from those who've seen it so far. How did you find, or how did that project initially come about?
That was from my manager Brian. Really, he kind of organised that right from the get-go. When I turned pro, Ross Whitaker was kind of following me around with the camera for the last 2 years, and I definitely couldn't have done this documentary with anyone else. Really, Ross was. I've obviously known Ross for a long time now, and he's directed some great boxing documentaries, and he's someone who I completely trust, and that's why this documentary worked out so well. I think he was completely unintrusive, and I think
there was a few Katie that had tried before, wasn't there?
There was a few I tried before, and it just didn't work out. So yeah, as I said, I just couldn't have done this with anyone else, and I still haven't seen the documentary, by the way, but I hear it's really good. So
and I know that
it's great.
The documentary obviously came post Rio, which was obviously a bit of a disappointing time for yourself. Would you say it was an enjoyable process filming the documentary, though, even during that period?
Yeah, I think it was. I definitely enjoyed the process, and as I said before, a lot of the time I didn't even know that Ross was in the room with the camera. It really was a fly-in-the-wall documentary. And it came out really raw and honest, I think, and it's definitely a strange time to start a documentary right at a low point of my career, but I really felt like the best was yet to come for me, and people have really seen that in the last 2 years as well. Yeah.
Well, great. We're all looking forward to that. The doc is called Katie, and it hits Irish cinemas on the 26th of this month. Katie, just to move on to matters in the ring, one thing that's always said about your career is that you basically single-handedly raised the bar in women's boxing at amateur level anyway, brought about the Olympic clearance and so on. It seems a lot of people are hoping you have a similar effect on the pros now. Do you enjoy that kind of responsibility, or is it something you'd take much notice of even?
I don't really take much notice of it, but it is great to have that responsibility, and I'm very happy to take that on. I'm just kind of focusing on my fight each time, and it's very important that I produce good performances on the night and to get people talking. And I want to be involved in big fights. I said that before. I want to be involved in fights that get the public talking and to raise the bar in women's boxing. That's what I've always wanted to do, really. I'm very, very happy to take that responsibility on, and I think for the first time in a long time, people are really seeing the best of women's boxing as well. Women's boxing is definitely on a high at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I know in the ring the switch from amateur style to professional can be a little bit tricky at times, like Luke Campbell, who won gold at the Olympics in 2012 as well, maybe struggled slightly adapting to the pro style. How did you find that switch yourself?
I actually didn't realise the difference. There is a huge difference between amateur boxing and professional boxing, and I didn't really realise that until I did turn pro. When I was in some of these pro gyms and sharing the ring and sparring against some of the top pros. It really is a different sport altogether, and it does take you a while to adapt to that, I think. And even for myself, I think from fight to fight, I am getting better and better each time. And I'm still kind of adapting, and I'm just kind of changing my style a small bit. I'm working on completely different things in the gym than what I had done for years and years in the amateur game. So it is a completely different sport, but it is something that I absolutely love, the challenge of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously when you were with the High Performance, you would have done a lot of training back in Ireland. Now you're stateside a fair bit with Ross. Did it take some getting used to, like, switching to America, or are you enjoying it now?
I am definitely enjoying it. I'm living in a place called Vernon, which is in the middle of nowhere, basically. I don't know how I ended up over here, but it is definitely a perfect environment, I think, for training. I love it out here, actually. The training side of things is obviously fantastic, but Ross, I feel like he's the best man for the job, and he's definitely getting the best out of me over here, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
I'm loving the training. I'm enjoying it, and when I first came over here, actually, to Ross, it was the first time in a long time where I actually started to enjoy my boxing again, and I think that's definitely shown in my performances.
Mm. And as a world champion now, are there specific things you're working on with Ross, or is it just more about fine-tuning stuff at the top level?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things I need to work on and that I need to improve on from fight to fight. And now at this stage, I'm just going to fine-tune a few things for next week's fight.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough fight. I'm obviously expecting a really tough fight. She's a top season pro. She's very, very experienced. So I had me at my best in this fight. But as I said before, I just want to be involved in big fights. I want to unify the division, and I'd love to make history in the sport.
Yeah, and that fight takes place in Boston now this weekend coming. But you're obviously you're more synonymous with London, I'd say, ever since 2012, really. And even as a pro, like, half your fights have taken place there. I was at the fight in July when you fought Kimberly Connor, and the reception was incredible. You must be even a little bit surprised that the UK crowd have taken so warmly to you, and the award, obviously, from the UK board shows that as well.
Yeah, definitely. You're dead right. The sport has been absolutely fantastic, and every single one of my fights, really. And I'm expecting a big Irish contingent here in Boston next week, so I can't wait for that as well. But I mean, I think I've always had the support from at home and from all the Irish people. But it's great to get that support globally as well, from the UK fans and obviously here in America as well. So that's only a good thing, really.
Yeah, and Eddie Hearn is obviously key in that, given that he's UK-based himself. But he's making moves into the American market with DAZN. And I remember at the DAZN launch, it was basically yourself and Anthony Joshua were like front of house. So you're very much a major part of the Matchroom stable now. Is the intention for you to remain stateside for the next foreseeable future, or what's the plan, Katie?
Yeah, I'm not too sure, really. I'd obviously love to build a big fan base over here in the States. I think that I'd obviously love to be involved in big fights out here and to make it a name for myself out here. I think that's what every fighter wants to do, really. Yeah. But I just do what I'm told, really. I just fight wherever I'm told to fight, and that's about it. Whether it's in the UK or whether it's here in the States, I don't mind. But I just want to be involved in big fights and get more belts under my belt. Yeah,
and we spoke about having to adapt to the pro style in the ring, but obviously another big difference from the amateurs is all the trash talking and stuff. There's a lot of people calling you out. Are you starting to enjoy that stuff as well, or are you just kind of doing your talking in the ring?
Yeah, I'm not one for trash talking at all. Actually, that's part of the sport I actually hate. Yeah. I hate all the trash talking, but it's obviously a big part of the sport, and people obviously find it entertaining. But I'm probably the quietest boxer in the world. Actually, I'm probably even at the press conference. I don't really say too much, but I just kind of keep quiet, and I'm always quietly confident, and I always do my talking in the ring, I guess. Yeah, and Cindy Serrano and even her sister Amanda have done a bit of talking in the build up to this fight, but she's obviously got world championship pedigree herself. Katie, what kind of a fight are you expecting from Cindy next Saturday? I'm expecting a very, very tough fight, actually. As I said before, she's a very, very experienced fighter, very, very seasoned. It's definitely, I expect it's the toughest fight I've had in my pro career, so I'm looking forward to the challenge. These are the kind of fights I absolutely relish and that I want to be involved in. And hopefully I produce a great performance on the night. The training has gone great over the last few months, and I can't wait for it. Yeah, and without overlooking Cindy, obviously, I know there's obviously some massive fights going forward. Cecilia Brykes obviously been mentioned as some sort of super fight too, and Pursoon at your division. Heather Hardy's even been thrown in the mix lately.
Is there anyone you're aiming for in particular, or are you just going to, or what's the plan generally, do you think?
Yeah, I think in and around the lightweight division, it's stacked with a lot of great talent and a lot of great female fighters. But I think the biggest fight that everyone has talked about over the last year is myself and Amanda Serrano. And I think that's probably the biggest fight in women's boxing at the moment, and that fight has to happen soon. I hope, hopefully next year at some time. So that's a huge fight for both of us. And obviously I have to get over her sister first next week, but that fight is definitely something that I've always wanted.
And I think Amanda was talking about switching to MMA. Do you think a fight with yourself would be the best way to coax her back to boxing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a strange time for her to turn to go to MMA when there's so many great fights out there for at the moment. Even myself, Michaela Meyer, a lot of top female fighters in and around that division. So I don't know why she's choosing to go to MMA at this time when there's a lot of money to be made in women's boxing right now with these fighters ahead of her. So
Seems like there's plenty on the horizon, and I'm sure there'll be a big Irish turnout in Boston on Saturday night. Best of luck, Katie, and thanks a million for taking the call.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate it.
There you have it. So those were the thoughts of Katie Taylor as she gets set to defend her titles versus Cindy Serrano in Boston. It was great to catch up with her, and it's nice to see her getting such a positive push from Eddie Hearn, because I don't know about you, but it always feels like she's become underappreciated in the Irish media. I don't think they quite understand what they've got in Katie Taylor. You know?
I think the fact that she's not fighting in Ireland isn't helping her cause, but we know there's many reasons why there's no big fights happening in Ireland at the moment. But when you sit down and you watch Katie Taylor fight, she always impresses and she wins. And then I suppose the best way of judging it is maybe to see some of the opponents she's beaten in the pro ranks and what they've gone on to achieve since then. Yeah. And then maybe those people that doubt who she's fighting, that like McCaskill was the fight. I remember we were actually in the office here one Wednesday night watching it, and it was a tough fight for her. Yeah. But McCaskill's since gone on to
win a world
title. So Katie Taylor can only beat who's put in front of her, but she beats them comprehensively. And I don't know, what is it going to take for people to kind of appreciate, technically, she's an incredible boxer.
Yeah, she certainly is. I think people do appreciate her, though. She's kind of like that kind of, I don't know how to put it, like she's just a standalone individual that kind of transcends men. I feel like there could be, and there are other female professional fighters, in Ireland and England, hundreds of them, thousands of them, but they're not known. So as a sport, probably doesn't get the recognition. But I always think Katie does get the recognition, that she has.
You do get some people saying like, who's she beaten? Like, she's a world champion, but who has she beaten? And that's my argument. Then is okay, these fighters that she's beaten, that people are questioning, have then gone on to become world champions themselves. So she's beating fighters that are...
Yeah, Jessica McCaskill is getting a push. She's been promoted, and I'm sure they're trying to, because they kind of had that rivalry, they had a great fight. Yeah. I think Eddie Hearn, whoever's behind her, has seen that she could be... She kind of has star quality, and that's a fight for the future. That if they build it right, they can come again, with that fight. And that's kind of more... It's not about... That's one of the problems is what the job of the promoter and the people in boxing is that they have to build the opponents to her level in terms of, I don't even know about skill, but profile wise, because there's a lack of profile because of women's boxing. Never had the recognition that she has had.
See, people would have been in the McCaskill fight, the build up, McCaskill banker. So people, she works full time as a banker. Yeah. So they, straight away.
It seems like every article is just demeaning Katie Taylor's opponents rather than pointing out how much better she is than everybody else. That's just my personal opinion on that. I just when she was queen of the London Olympics, she was everyone wanted a piece of her, and now she it's not an exaggeration to say she reinvented the wheel in amateur boxing, and now she's doing the same in the pro game. And I don't know why she's not getting the same level of respect for that. She's just trying to raise the tide in the pro game and bring everyone.
The thing is, she's still in the midst of doing it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe when the day comes, whenever she does decide to retire, she will definitely lead the sport in a better standing and in a better place than when she started. But I think maybe like now that we've looked back on her Olympic and the impact she's had on the amateur game, we'll have looked back with a similar, in similar reflection to what she will have gone on to do in the professional game.
Like, where is she, do you think, in terms of what she wanted to achieve? Say when Eddie Hearn came on board, like, and you talked about promoters, she probably couldn't have got a better promoter to get her these big fights and big venues. Obviously, when she became pro, she wanted to unify the division. So she's got 2 titles, so she's nearly there. But what's the fight that's going to maybe take her to the next level in terms of world?
I think it's she wants to have big fights, and that's the only place where they're going to struggle to get somebody like a big opponent. Now, we know the fight this weekend she's fighting Cindy Serrano, and the fight that everybody wants to see is Amanda Serrano. But even if this week, if she was fighting Amanda Serrano, would it be that big, back page, the back page of the newspaper, like, this is the big fight, in terms of when Bernadone fought Cordoba, that it was headline news everywhere. Would it translate to that? I don't know at this stage. They have to do a lot more in terms of building female boxing, not just around Katie, but around her opponents and giving them the platform as well. Now there are other female fighters who have high pro, like Clarissa Shields is a 2-time world champion, and Selena Brockhouse. They have big profiles, but they're not in her division, and that's the problem, you see.
Yeah.
Like the Natasha Jonas fight, like that's kind of gone on the back burner.
It's another one, like Vivian Obanoff, who knocked Jonas out. Yeah. Katie beat her in her 4th fight. Do you know what I mean? That's the levels we're talking about here. But no, like, she has cleared the belts, as you mentioned there, and it's probably a matter of the other 2 women are pricing themselves out.
Yeah, it doesn't matter though if she becomes unified champion. Like, I think for her it'd be have a big fight against a big rival. I think would be more the desire, I think she's recognised probably as the best, but I think it would probably mean something to be unified champion, but also to have that big fight, that marquee kind of fight where people remember it, where it's a headline on its own, but in its own right.
Do you remember the first time you saw her fight?
I remember the first time I saw her in the gym. We were in Drimna in the amateur boxing club there. It was in 2002, and I'd heard about her a little bit, and she was inspiring one of the lads at the time, and I said, wow, she can really fight. And it was the same day I spoke to Gary Keegan. He told me about high performance being put together, and he said she's going to be a big part of it. But even then, I think she was about 15 at the time. So, she's been marked out for stardom. She's always had that ability to fight and to punch above her weight. For excuse the pun, but she could always box well, and always fight as well as box. And had that kind of competitive. That's what makes it great. The fact that she's willing to trade and fight, and she probably makes these fights closer than they need to be. Because if she boxed and used her skills, she'd probably dominate them. Very boring. But she trades and engages, and the fights are better for it. Even though she might take 1 or 2 punches, but she's never in any trouble
You've seen the documentary, haven't you?
Yeah, it's very immersive and fly on the wall. There's nothing hidden in that, and she spoke about that to me there. So I'm looking forward to that. It comes out on the same day as Andy's book, so that's a big day for Irish boxing.
When is my book out? I don't even know. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and I'm sure it'll be really good.
So you can watch the documentary and then start reading the book.
So Katie's one of 3 world title fights on that card in Boston. Another with Irish interest sees James Tennyson of Belfast Cronk square up with one of DAZN's featured players now in Tevin Farmer. James is only 25, but it feels like he's been around forever. Like, he's had so many ups and downs, and he's now made his stead and he's ready to challenge. So would you give him a good chance against Tevin Farmer?
I give him a decent chance. He's a live underdog, definitely. Well, Farmer's won the title from Dib. It was a vacant title. It was a really dirty, mixed, sloppy fight. It's not like he's beaten a great champion to come, and he has been beaten before himself. But it's a great story himself, Tevin Farmer, coming, losing his first fight, losing a couple on the way, and then coming back to win a world title. And I'm not sure what the decision was to fight Tennyson. I know he's highly ranked in the IBF, so maybe they were forced to make the fight or whatever, but Tennyson is a live puncher. He's definitely a live dog in this fight, and he's a guy who's kind of crept up. He fought on small shows in Belfast, the Devonish, like it's a hotel in Belfast, and then got these opportunities to fight on Burnett's undercards, and in some ways stole the show, or not stole the show, but really signalled himself out as a guy who's a serious fighter and has some star potential. And he had 2 great wins on Burnett undercards, and then he goes to London and beats Martin Ward, in a fight which he wasn't having it all his own way early, and showed that resolve. Similar to the Ritson fight with Patera, he kind of Patera'd Ward in a sense that he kind of came back when it was all against him, and now he's fighting for the world title, and he's a serious challenger in this fight. How do you guys see it going? Like
you talked about Farmer there and how he lost his first fight, and Tennyson obviously had a shocker, and it was his second fight.
Yeah, it was a bit later than that, I think, wasn't it?
It was 5 years ago anyway. It was on the Frampton parody undercard.
Yeah.
And Sam Cobbs, he'd won 2 fights from about 70, and it was supposed to be a takeover. And Tennyson, he's only 20, so it's kind of probably still growing into the sport a little bit. But he's come roaring back. He had another loss after that, but it was against Ryan Walsh, who's a good fighter, and he probably learned a lot from that fight.
Yeah.
And then Declan Geraghty, he took Declan Geraghty out.
From the Walsh loss, he's really just he's gone through the gears and gone through the levels.
And he moved up in weight as well, so probably he looks more comfortable at that weight.
Farmer's, you wouldn't necessarily call him a slick southpaw, but he's a southpaw, and he kind of has some of that Philadelphia kind of slickness, but he's also tough and robust, and he's wild. And in some ways, Tennyson style kind of counteracts all that, because Tennyson is so neat and kind of not rigid, but composed and compact, but also punches. He punches for the weight division, and especially to the body. It's an intriguing fight.
Yeah. Just on Farmer there, I'd be very wary of a clash of heads. He has a habit of lunging in and tying up, making it very, very awkward for his opponents.
Well, him in the Dib fight, it was really dirty,
Yeah.
So he's not afraid of that. That's that Philadelphia toughness, that's it. And if you give it to them, they'll give it to you, And him and Dib were both in it, but I think Tennyson will set out his stall as he always does. He'll press forward kind of methodically, but look to punch hard and use the jab. And it'll be interesting to see how Farmer reacts to that. Does he box and move, which I don't see him doing much, but he'll try to probably stand in the pocket and try to maybe do like a southpaw version of a Mayweather with him. It's an interesting fight. It's an interesting fight, and he's definitely got a shot at winning it.
Do you think when Tennyson goes hooks to the body, he drops both his hands a bit low?
To be honest, Simon, I haven't seen too much of that. Because that's an interesting point, and he could might be predicting or seeing something that Tevin Farmer can expose. But I know he's hurt a lot of people, especially Ward, to the body. He's hurt a lot of his opponents to the body. Tennyson is one of his best tools and his best armory is his left hook to the body. And it'll be interesting to see how that works against a southpaw, because he'll be on the outside. It's not as usually as effective against a southpaw, left hook to the body. So he'll try and throw the right hand left hook. That's what they all try to do against southpaw. Get your foot on the outside, your left foot on the outside of his right foot, and throw the left hand right hook. And it could be effective, but Tevin Farmer is so unorthodox that sometimes, see, somebody who's so well schooled as Tennyson, sometimes to completely offset that, and the style that works against that is kind of the wild, awkward style, which Farmer has. But also, the opposite is true as well. What can upset Tevin Farmer's style is Tennyson's style. Someone who's so kind of polished and kind of 1-2, 1-2. It's not straight lines, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's basic, good boxing with some substance and not flash. Whereas Farmer might be a bit more flash and less substance. So, as I said, he's in the fight. He's an underdog because he hasn't been at this level yet, but he's a live dog.
Yeah, and Tevin Farmer, as I mentioned, he's a featured player for DAZN because Eddie Hearn probably hasn't hit the heady heights he'd intended with this launch, and Tevin Farmer is one of the world champions he does have. So Tevin Farmer finds himself in a position where he's basically quasi-headlining this event, given that Billy Joe Saunders has dropped off. And you know, it's a big chance for him to like splash onto the American market and make a name for himself. So he'll be eager to make a point. And there's flirtation with Gervonta Davis from Matchroom as well. So that's a big fight to be made.
And John O'Carroll is back and around there. He's in for
final eliminator.
Yeah, final eliminator. So he wants a shot at the winner. But I'd love to see Tennyson win it and bring it home. You know, kind of just as a story. You know, a kid from.
Will it help him? The fact that there's a few Irish fighters on the card and there'll be a fair Irish crowd.
There should be a good crowd there for him, yeah. I'm sure he'll be bringing on. He has a good following in Belfast, and that was part of him getting on those. The fact that he saw it was a good ticket seller was why he got on those Burnett undercards. Yeah. And now I'm sure he'll be bringing a big crew over there. It's his big shot, and I'd love to see him do it. Yeah, it'd be a great story.
Yeah, there's a serious level of Irish interest on that card. So Sean McComb's there as well, and Niall Kennedy's back in action as well. You obviously did that remarkable piece with him a couple of months ago. It's a great platform for him, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's great to see him getting these chances. And he's fighting at undefeated heavyweight, I believe. A guy who's in an MMA background. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they match up. Niall is an improving heavyweight, you know, and he's trying to make a stay for himself and make a name for himself, and yeah. It's looking good for him.
And me and Phil were discussing it earlier. Like, in his mind, what would you say is a realistic target for Niall Kennedy at this stage?
It's hard to know because he's still improving. I don't know, like world titles and things like that might be a step too far. But he's definitely like. I'd like to see him fight for like NABF title or. You know, the equivalent of that, like the North American title for each of the governing bodies, and that usually will put you automatically in the top 10 of, and then he's eligible for a shot at one of the big boys. He just needs to keep winning. I'm not sure. Like, see, he fights a lot of time in America, so I'm not sure if he could fight for a European title. But that's definitely in his reach of fight for like a European. If they could ever bring fighting back to Ireland, maybe a European title shot. But other than that, outside of the world belts, there's not really. The only other credible titles are the likes of the NABF or the NWBF, which is behind us there, something like that. You know, it's a North American title, and it does hold credence because it's a hard one to win. It's the equivalent of a European title because it's North America and Mexico as well. So, you know, that's a deep pool of talent there. Yeah.
And on the same night, we have Michael Conlan back in action in Las Vegas. And I saw Adam Booth was talking to Coogan Cassius over the weekend saying that he's kept Michael Conlan under wraps and they've been working on stuff specifically. Do you hear any whispers about what kind of stuff?
I haven't been in touch with him. I know Adam was always... Adam's eager for them to kind of dial down the hype. Right. Because he wants Michael to get to be not to be a flash in the pan. He wants him to be a guy who fulfills his potential, not to be a guy who had all this hype coming out of the amateurs. And Adam, he's in no better place because Adam will guide him in terms of picking the opponents, but also cultivating a style of fighting where he's obviously got that amateur background, Michael, and he's got all the skill that needs, but you also need small things to help you transition into a pro fighter in terms of how to put your hips and throw hooks in your shoulder and how to move your head and just move your feet in a certain way that when you do land, they have that power. And I'm sure he'll be looking to respond to Shakur Stevenson. You know, there's already a rivalry between them, and he'll be looking to respond to them, and I anticipate him having a great performance.
How hard is it for Adam Booth to basically say to Michael Conlan, look, we know you've got all this potential. It's a delicate conversation. No, I don't even think he needs to have the conversation with Michael, and Michael doesn't need to be aware of it. Michael just needs to fight who's put in front of him. You know, and it's not Michael. Michael justifies the hype because of the skill he has. He was the best amateur fighter to come out of Ireland in a long, long time. World champion. We never had a world champion, you know, and we all saw what happened at the Olympics. So that doesn't really come into it. But he's the biggest prospect coming out of Ireland, and he just needs to be managed and
and done in the right way. Done in the right way. Not move too fast because whatever, they've got the money invested in him. They want to push him forward fast and get him into harder fights than needs to be. He just needs to be taken along at the right pace. And I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Whereas I'm sure if you ask Michael Conlan, he'd say I'll fight anyone.
Of course, and that's the attitude that he has, and that's the attitude that he wants and needs.
Yeah.
And likely, if he did step up to a higher level, it would probably be easier for him because he'd be fighting guys who want to box him and want to fight with him, and that's where he can compete at. Whereas at this level, he's fighting guys who are trying to survive. And they always make you look bad, or guys who don't really want to engage, and they always make you look bad. But these fights are all about learning and going through the process and learning your trade, and it's invaluable. So there's no rush with Michael. I don't think so. I know he's not the youngest in terms of boxing. He's in his mid 20s now, but there's time for him. There's time for him, and he needs another year or two, year and a half, to learn his trade and then step up. That's what I think. That's just my opinion. It might be wrong. He might see it another way, and I wouldn't disagree with him. But in terms of skill, he's up there with the best in the world. He just needs to learn his trade. That's all.
Yeah, and there's certainly plans in place for Michael Conlan. There's a clear pathway for him, which mightn't be said for some of the other Irish prospects. As we said, also on that card, Nicotine is fighting, so that's a clear one they're trying to set up. And that's on the undercard of Ryota Murata, who's defending his WBA regular middleweight title. Jason Quigley had been linked with him, but instead Jason Quigley is fighting Thursday against veteran Freddie Hernandez. So what do you think of Jason Quigley's progression to this point, Andy?
A little bit stop-start. I'm not sure how you guys see it.
I agree.
That's basically through injury.
Yeah.
That would have been a huge fight had he got the Murata fight. It would have been a nice little coup, and it's a winnable fight for him. I'm not sure if they ever fought in the amateurs. They would have been around. Maybe Murata turned pro.
I think they just missed each other.
Yeah. But Murata is not like he's a regular champion, and that's probably about where he is. He's no super champion in terms of the belt and his status, because he's a tough fighter, but definitely beatable, and that would have been a nice fight for Quigley, really, to announce himself. But again, a guy I would say there's not a rush to throw him in big fights. The Murata fight would be nice, maybe after this one if they can make it, because I think it's a winnable fight. But he's a guy with star potential, like Jason Quigley. He's good-looking guy. He speaks very well, and he's a very good boxer, very good technical boxer, and can punch a little bit. And as long as his hands heal up, and he needs to get busy. Again, as I said before, back to McGregor, there's no substitute for activity. When you're boxing regularly, you build up this instinct that you do things automatically. You find yourself in a situation where you're against the ropes, and all of a sudden you slip 2 or 3 punches and you move down. You turn around and say, you don't even remember doing it, but that's all through activity. It kind of the reflexes become automatic when you're active, and when you're not, it's the complete opposite. And I'd like to see Jason get active and get busy, and don't chase the big fights, because they will come, because he's, as I said earlier, all those lists I made, good looking, good fighter, and articulate, and he's also Irish in America, and that's a huge selling point. So the big fights will come. He's got a good promoter, Golden Boy, and they've invested in him, so they want to get a return.
Is he going to change much, do you think, in terms of working with Dominic Ingle?
I think it's a good match. I think it's a good match.
In a way, actually, I know we'll probably get on to Billy Joe in a bit, but the fact that Billy Joe Saunders' fight is no longer happening against Andrade, does that mean maybe... Is that a good thing for Quigley, where he gets a bit more attention?
He get a bit more attention. But he would have had the sparring with Billy Joe, and that would be beneficial to him. I know there's another guy in the gym as well, super middleweight or light heavyweight, Jake Ball. So there's good sparring there, and Kell Brook is also there. They'd be sparring.
He was on a few weeks ago, Jason, and it was something you kind of picked up on. Yeah,
I just put it to him I asked him, was Saunders' training camp sort of picking up in intensity, and he kind of insinuated that maybe they weren't interacting as much as I figured they would have been.
Yeah.
So maybe they're being kept apart. Would that be unusual?
Some even though you might train in the same gym, doesn't really mean you're teammates sometimes, And people go about their business the way they want to do it, and they're not like, you're brought in and it's we're best friends all of a sudden, So that's just the way it might have been between them, the dynamic. But Yeah, the fact that Billy Joe's not fighting will help him, but hopefully he got to do some rounds with him because he will learn from Billy Joe Saunders.
So, as you mentioned there, like the Tapia fight really set him back about 12 months quickly, so he's probably a little bit behind where he wanted to be, but I can only echo what you said, like he's the whole package and both out of the ring and he can punch a bit and he's got the amateur pedigree as well, so like the future's bright for him. It's just a matter of where it's going to go really. So he'll be hoping to crack the middleweight division where things are a bit in flux at the moment. Golovkin has been dethroned obviously and Canelo's moving up to 168 maybe briefly, but we can probably touch on that later on. But what do you make of the Billy Joe Saunders situation, Andy?
I think it highlights I guess a flaw in the system or a loophole or something, you know, because apparently had he been as you said, has he been fighting in England, he would have been past the fight. This thing is banned on VADA, not WADA, or vice versa. And so it just shows that the anti-doping and governing bodies, they need to come together and unify the divisions. They need to unify the belts. We'll get on the same page. And because it might just be, might just be a simple mistake. You'd hope it is. He
doesn't really help himself, does he? Reaction to it.
That's just he's never going to change. That's just the way he is, you know.
It's not like we were waiting for a fall, you know, and some people celebrated in his misfortune, if you want to put it like that, you know.
Yeah, well, because we talked about him a few weeks ago on the show. It was around the time he got the £100,000 fine for the video. Like those videos that go around, like it just doesn't paint a good picture of him. I know, like his game is boxing, and that's where he does most of his talking. But it's a strange one where you have fighters that they're great fighters, but I think people expect them to be role models as well. Doesn't necessarily, like boxers don't have to be role models, but there is still a way that you have to carry yourself.
I guess so. I guess that's the reason why I got £100,000 fine. Like I'm sure that's hurting him, and it'll make him think twice about doing anything again of a similar ilk, you know. Yeah, sports people don't have to be role models. Like, you know, sometimes you'll meet these guys and you think, oh, I can't wait to meet this guy, and then turn out to be complete assholes, you know.
Yeah.
And,
you thinking of anyone in particular, Andy?
No, you know. I remember I met Sylvester Stallone one time. I was like, can I get a photograph? I was like, not now. That was it. No, you know, it's just...
He'll be at the Creed 2 premiere.
Oh, we'll all be there.
We'll all be there. We'll get a photo with him.
Who have you got in that one anyway? Krieger or Drago?
What's happening now? The two sons are fighting.
Yeah.
I'd say Creed will get it, won't he? Because it's named Creed. I'd say the hints in the title would do.
He lost the first one. He lost to Tony Bellew. What was his name?
Did he, yeah?
Ricky Conlon.
Pretty Ricky Conlon.
Also in the trailer, Drago looks a lot bigger than him.
Yeah.
He does, looks about 2 weights above him.
Saunders had been due to face Andrade, who, like, people might be overly familiar with him, but like he's probably one of the more like under-promoted fighters of recent times, like abundance of talent, but just as boxing historically goes, you know, mismanagement and promotional disputes and stuff. But you know, you'd like to think with Hearn behind him now, he's going to get the backing he probably merited a couple of years ago. Would you have much experience with him, Andy? Or?
I've sparred him a lot.
Really?
He's a really good boxer, yeah. He would have been younger, you know, obviously he's a few years younger than me, but we sparred a lot early in my career in the Poconos and in Florida a couple of times he was my main sparring partner when I fought Craig McEwen. And he's a serious talent, serious talent. He was he world champion as an amateur, I think. Yeah. So you know that's a high title. Like that's a really good title. And I guess he was with Joe DeGuardia Promotions in New England, and now he's with Eddie Hearn. So he will. I'm not sure. He's probably one of the most underrated fighters out there, you know, and. He would have been a real test for Billy Joe Saunders. He would have been a real test because he's big. He's big. Even though he fought light middleweight a lot, he's a big guy, you know. And he's a slick, fast hands, and like it would have been an interesting fight. Billy Joe Saunders always finds a way to win. Like he is a winner. You know, he hasn't lost a fight in a long time since. I can't even remember when. No, he would have been back in the early in his amateur days, Billy Joe. So, and in some ways. This whole ban could be some blessing in disguise for him because Andrade was a serious fight, you know what I mean? But yeah, he'll probably get a good promotion now. And he's a serious fighter. I've sparred him a lot, and even though he was young then, he's kind of suffered, as you said, from management disputes and stop and start career, and never really getting that big break. But he's a serious fighter.
Yeah, so he was in the who needs him club sort of thing, but now it's going to be hard to avoid him if Eddie Hearn's pumping the money.
Belt, yeah.
And he has the belt, yeah, and like it's all up in the air a little bit. Canelo has no broadcaster at the moment, so he might be able to be coaxed into the zone with, like Danny Jacobs is coming up, he might pick up another of the belts. So
he's also with Eddie Hearn.
Yeah.
They're fighting for the vacant IBF with Derevchenko, so there's a unification fight there.
The last fight on HBO.
Is it? Yeah. Wow. It will be like a different, it'll be a different landscape once they're gone, because I personally was very close to them, because I would have travelled a lot with Emmanuel when he was commentating on HBO. So nearly every week in America I'd be travelling with Emmanuel, going to those fights all over with Jim Lampley, Larry Merchant and Roy Jones, and even some of the backroom staff like Howard Lederman and the lady who does all the organisation, the run of Tammy. And it will be, and I would have met Peter Nelson quite a bit, so it will be different, and it'll be interesting to see where those guys end up going, like Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman and that, Be interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a HBO review show.
I don't know what Larry Merchant's like on a night out.
He's a good dancer.
Yeah. Gone to the dance with Floyd at one stage.
Yeah. People always used to give him stick, and this argument, and I'm not sure if you guys have noticed it recently on Twitter. If you the fighters have this argument where, you've never boxed, so your opinion means nothing. Do you ever seen that? A lot lately. Yeah. A lot lately. I've seen a lot of guys have kind of taken, they're very sensitive and taken I know there's Twitter trolls and all this and that, but it doesn't mean that if you've never fought you can't have a valid opinion, And that was always a thing labeled Larry Merchant. And I'm not sure if you the famous photo of Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston in the second fight where he's like that, if you're looking between Muhammad Ali's legs you'll see Larry Merchant. So that's how long he's been around boxing and reporting on boxing. So the man knows what he's looking at. And I think there's a conversation that the fact that I've just seen it not recently on Twitter that a lot of fighters have taken this argument, what do you know? You'd never stepped in the ring. I don't think it's a valid argument. I think you can have an opinion.
It's like
just because you're a critic doesn't mean you can't be a playwright or vice versa.
Yeah, but even people, say Jose Mourinho, he never played at a decent level, but he's won loads of trophies. So that kind of, when he was at Real Madrid, what did you ever win as a player?
Yeah.
But so, if you can analyse something, what's going on. No, surely you should be listened to.
No, it's an interesting point because Peter Nelson basically said we're leaving this platform because we're a storytelling network and there's more money to be made from telling.
I'm not sure if you got it right. The wording of that statement.
Yeah, we
like the stories that reflect the socio-economic or whatever it is, or reflection of the time, whatever. Kind of spun it in a way, but there's no better vehicle or to tell the human story than boxing. Most of the guys come from nothing and earn their way to fulfill their dreams and achieve fame and fortune through the sport of boxing. And there's all walks of life in boxing. So I don't know if that argument held up, but
no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And to tie in with your previous point that there were no better storytellers than Larry Merchant, and even Max Kellerman is very articulate, and Jim Lampley's a great play-by-play. Your knockout or your world title included, he narrated basically 4 decades of history there. So, they're going to be missed, and hopefully they all land somewhere. And you never know, HBO might be back. Let's not rule them out quite yet. There might be.
Just because one guy says that he could be gone, and then somebody could be back at it.
Yeah.
Right, so that's your week in boxing. Before we go, we might just round up some of the other bits and pieces that have been going on behind the scenes. I mentioned that Canelo is going up to super middleweight to fight Rocky Fielding, and in a sport with social media influx and whatnot, it's hard to be surprised, but I think everyone was caught in the hop with this one. What do you think is going to happen with Canelo Rocky Fielding? How's that one going to play out?
I didn't see that one coming. Where are they going to put Golovkin? Canelo 3 was the question I was thinking, and then this thing came out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, we were kind of expected Canelo and Lemieux, wasn't it? It was really the one that we were talking about after the Lemieux beat Spike on the same night. But Is Rocky feeling like what's he looking at here? He's obviously going to get a nice payday, but
I thought we were looking at Fielding Callum Smith. There's a unification fight, and in Liverpool at Anfield we were talking.
Well, when Fielding beats Canelo, then
well, it's interesting. Like, remember, Canelo needed 3 or 4 fights to grow into middleweight. To fight Golovkin, and all the while Golovkin was having those not hard fights, but fights, and putting more miles on the clock and more, years of age, and now all of a sudden he's going straight up to middleweight, super middleweight. But it's I don't blame Rocky Fielding for taking the fight. I think it's some way he's won a world title, and now he has to secure his future. That's what it's more about. It's no point in having a belt and not being able to provide for your family. So I admire him for it. And this is the difference is, like, it's not comparable. We look at him fighting Amir Khan. It's the size difference and the weight difference. And Fielding is a strong, big, robust middleweight.
But it's great exposure for Rocky Fielding as well. People are going to be talking about him for the next few months, and regardless of how he gets on, like, I don't think he's going to be embarrassed anyway.
No, I don't think so. Canelo's like we talked about the pound for pound earlier, Lomachenko and Crawford. Canelo's in this mix. There's a top 3 there, whatever way you want to chop it up, to me. So we'll see. Like, he's gone up against probably the biggest star in boxing, isn't he? Canelo's probably.
Oh, definitely.
Do you agree? Canelo's the biggest star in boxing?
Whether you like him or not, given the contaminated beef.
We've all had a bad burrito, Phil.
Yeah, that's why I always get chicken.
And it's a good point on Fielding, because you spoke a couple of weeks ago about George Groves being in sort of bonus territory, and when Rocky Fielding was knocked out in a round by Callum Smith, I don't think anyone expected him to win a world title, be it a regular title, but get back to that level. So he has to take the paydays when he's getting them, and you never know, he'd probably get a rematch with Callum Smith down the line. There's probably other fights beyond this.
Yeah, there definitely is. It's whatever he wants it.
Yeah,
he must be 33 now, 32 is he, and he's won a title. He should have his future should be secure after this fight with Canelo.
Yeah,
depends how much he wants it.
And that's December 15th, and a week before it's been mooted that Chris Eubank Jr. against James DeGale is set for 168 as well. Early impressions on that, Andy? How do you think that's going to go?
Hard to know. 2 guys who are pretty unreliable.
Like, if they're both at their best, DeGale wins.
Could be the best fight of all time. But more than likely you're going to have DeGale. He has to show something now. This is a make or break fight for him, because for a long time there's been questions over his desire to fight. And then Eubank has to prove that he belongs at this level. If he loses, then it's probably his credibility is probably gone too if he loses to DeGale. So it's a huge fight.
Yeah.
In terms of what's at stake, in terms of the boxing world in general, probably not. But it's an interesting fight too. There'll be some good press conferences, I'm sure.
It might be the kind of fight DeGale needs to get that desire.
Yeah, maybe someone to G him up, or
just to poke the bear almost.
Yeah. So we'll see. Like, DeGale has a lot of skill, a lot of talent. It's just always been his desire, or sometimes the way he fights, you'd question. But when he's on form, he's as good as anybody. So we'll see.
I think DeGale's looking to even the score there. They sparred a couple of years ago, and Eubank tweeted straight afterwards, "Great sparring session, just schooled an Olympian."
Yeah.
And DeGale was like, "I can't wait to get my hands on him." And that was about 5 or 6 years ago. So there's needle there already.
Eubank's another one of those, not a role. It wouldn't be a role model, even though he's a great sportsman. That's the type of guy he is.
Yeah. And we saw Deontay Wilder extend his knockout streak earlier on there. The Tyson Fury fight is actually inching closer to a point where it might actually happen now. Do you give Fury much chance there, Andy, or is it still a bit too soon in your opinion?
It's a pick-em fight.
Really?
I think so. He's looking increasingly in better and better shape, Fury. He's losing weight all the time. He's training in Big Bear.
Yeah.
He's sparring with Joe Joyce. So, it's good sparring. He's got a chance. I think it's a pick-em fight. When he's on when Fury can kind of find that form where he fought Klitschko again, he'll win. That's the question. And there were glimpses of it again in his last fight. The comeback fight again wasn't a fight. And if he's on song, he'll win. That's the question.
Yeah.
Because
Eddie Hearn and
Wilder
are going for Wilder, obviously. They want Wilder.
Of course, yeah. I can't believe they're having these negotiations for the fights. Apparently, having negotiations for the fights even taking place. But like Wilder, he's awkward. He's unconventional, and at times can look amateurish. He has a lot of speed, and he has a huge right hand. And if Fury can avoid those things, just watch it. Like, I think Fury can win the fight. I'm not sure, how do you guys see the fight going? Like, you guys would have a different opinion of Fury than I would. I think he's the most talented heavyweight out there, and he can do things that none of the other ones can do. That's why he's my pick as the best heavyweight out there when he's on form.
On ability, it's just whether that Tyson Fury that beat Klitschko still exists. Like, can he get back to that peak level of performance? If he does, as you said, he should be too much for Wilder, but it's whether if he's 90% that, he'd probably get knocked out. If he can get back to 100% level, he'll probably box rings around Wilder.
But there's probably, like, he can get back to, and I think he could still surpass that level.
Really?
You know, I think there's a lot in him. Like, he's a unique individual, but he's a unique fighter, Fury. And when he trains, he doesn't train like a 6'8" man, whatever he is. He trains like a middleweight, and he fights like a middleweight for a man of his size, and that's what sets him apart. He's kind of developed a style now where he moves a lot and he's slick. He wasn't always that way, but it's kind of a little niche, and it's very hard to counteract, especially a man of that size doing that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I looking at it, of the three of them, I said it last week, or on the last time we were on, I like Fury to beat Wilder. I like Wilder to beat Joshua. I like Joshua to beat Fury. And whether that plays out, we'll see. But I think it's a very interesting triumvirate.
Yeah.
No, I think Fury would be, like you said, the most talented of the three. But it's like Ronan said, can he get back to that level? If he can, I don't think anyone beats him.
He might get back to that level, and he might be back at that level in December against Wilder. But Wilder has that punch that can.
Yeah,
you know, he has the equaliser in terms of that.
Mascot.
So he has.
He won't be able to say much though.
He's already broken one jaw. Like, it's Fury just watch that right hand, slips and moves, nullifies what he does early in the fight, and then messes him around as he does, as he's able to do, and then start landing his own punches. And a man that, like, he hasn't knocked out many guys lately, Fury, but a man of that size can punch with real power. Trust me, I always
get the impression he could knock more people out.
Yeah, if he could have knocked the last guy out. Yeah, he did. He definitely took his foot off the pedal and got the rounds. And sometimes he punches with his hands open, which is a bad habit. And if you close your fist, it has a lot more impact. Sometimes he just, for him, it's boxing. He to hit and not get hit, and that's what boxing's about to him, and that's what it means. And if he'll win a fight by 12 rounds decision and not get hit, it's just as pleasurable for him than getting a knockout.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to breaking that fight down in a lot more detail. Hopefully it comes together and no mishaps in the meantime. But that's our lot for today. It's great to have you in as always, Andy. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Ronan.
And
thanks, Phil.
Thanks to Simon and Phil as well. Yeah, and to Tom and Niall in the box as well. I'm off to Boston now, but...
you packed?
Oh, well, nearly. I'll get there. I have to go to this Ireland game tonight. It's going to be the most...
Just make sure you bring your adapters for all your different electrical devices.
I'll try. I hope I don't get stopped at customs or something. We'll see what happens.
You heard about what happened at the McGregor fight?
No, what happened?
Like 25 people got stopped at customs going over and weren't able to enter America.
Really?
Did you hear that?
No. Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the papers, and they were on Joe Duffy and everything.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of people got stopped by immigration for unknown reasons, really.
Okay, I'll definitely have to double check my bag then.
So make sure you don't need nothing.
Well, we'll be back one way or another next week. I might not be here, but one of us will be back next week to recap all this Irish action over the weekend. Until then, though, it's good luck from us.